professionals, architects, academics, students, community members, and everyone who shares a passion for preserving our cultural legacy. Next. Okay, before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce Pansumnet. So Pansumnet, or the Pan-Sumatra Network for Heritage Conservation, is a heritage conservation network established in 1998. It brings together heritage activists, communities, organizations, and individuals from across Sumatra who share a common concern for preservation for cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible. Today, Pansumnet continues to serve as a space for sharing, learning, and collaboration in strengthening heritage conservation efforts in Sumatra and beyond. One of the Pansumnet regular activities and the Pansumnet monthly discussions, which has been held online since 2020. This program allow us to maintain communications, exchange knowledge, and build stronger connections among heritage practitioners, academics, professionals, and also communities. Tonight, webinar is organized by Pan Sumatra Network for Heritage Conservation, the Sumatra Heritage Trust or Beranda Warisan Sumatra, and the Pusat Dokumentasi and Arsitektur or PDA. It is designed for heritage professionals, architects, and academics, and everyone who is passionate about preserving historical buildings and our cultural legacy. So for today's rundown, we will begin the opening by the host, which is myself, and also followed by opening remarks for Mrs. Febrianti Suryaningsi, one of the directors of PDA. And after that, I will introduce our speakers and moderators, and the session will be fully guided by our moderators. And then the speakers will will run for about 45 to 60 minutes, and then followed by the discussions and also Q&A sessions. And before we close the session, we will also have a short photo documentation session. And for the theme for tonight, the theme is drones for AI for historic buildings, advancing heritage conservation with smart technology. So today we have Mr. Yohannes Firzal as our moderator, and also Mr. Michael Earle as our keynote speaker for today. But before that, to officially open tonight's discussions, we would like to invite Mrs. Febrianti Suryaningsi as our PDA director to deliver an opening remarks. Mrs. Febrianti, the time is yours, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is truly inspiring to see architects, engineers, historians, archaeologists, or cultural communities and technology enthusiasts from around Indonesia gathered here with one shared purpose, protecting our cultural heritage for future generations. Over the next few hours, we'll explore how cutting-edge tools like aerial drones and artificial intelligence are transforming the way we document, monitor, and restore historic buildings with greater precision and care than ever before. Pusat Dokumentasi Arsitektur Indonesia is honored to collaborate with Pansumnet and Beranda Warisan Sumatra or BWS in this evening webinar, as Pansumnet and Beranda Warisan Sumatra is a key role and partner in the preservation of cultural heritage, especially in the Sumatra region. Special thanks to Ibu Hasti, who has connected us with cultural heritage experts from various parts of the world. We are also honored to have Mr. Michael Earle, founder and CEO of InspektAI.com, as today's speaker, who will share real-world case studies, breakthrough research, and practical workflow you can apply to your own preservation project. Whether you're here to learn about 3D mapping with drones, AI-powered damage detection, or sustainable restoration strategies, I hope you leave this session with fresh ideas and new connection. Thank you for joining us today. Let's learn, discuss, and reimagine how technology can help us to safeguard the stories attached in stone, wood, and brick. Enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Febrianti, for the warm and meaningful opening remarks. Now, allow me to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight. The moderator for tonight. We are also pleased to welcome Mr. Yohannes Firzal from Universitas Riau.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Everyone can hear me?
Hello, Mr. Yohannes Firzal, hello. Nice to have you
Hello.
here.
Okay, thank you,
So
Elizabeth.
maybe I will introduce you first, and then I will give the first to you. Okay. So Mr. Yohannes Firzal is an architect, academic, and researcher whose work focuses on urban design, architecture, cultural heritage conservation, and also digital heritage documentation. He completed his degree in architecture at Universitas Gadjah Mada, a master degree in urban design at Universitas Gadjah Mada, a master degree in development studies at Institut Teknologi Bandung, and a PhD in architecture at Newcastle University in United Kingdom. He actively developed his professional competency through various trainings, architect and engineering registrations, and cultural heritage expertise. He is currently serves as a lecturer and researcher at the Architecture Study Program at Universitas Riau. Okay, Mr. Yohanes, I will give the opportunity to you as the moderator. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Sorry for the introduction. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Uh, Nice to meet you all from this webinar, even though we just in online, but we happy and glad you all. And very welcome to Michael as well. Okay, tonight we will have a speaker. I will give a short introduction about our speaker. Our speaker's name is Michael Earle. He is from the United States, a trained architect who has been leading architect from across continents and countries such as Spain, Dubai, uh, also in Thailand, Saudi Arabia, China, England, Germany, and so on. Where he is passionate for historic preservation and also uh, company which now Inspekt AI, which the company is mostly working with the iconic landmark and also UNESCO. Oh, short of about Inspekt AI was born from Michael's work as standing a challenge building owners face from defect detection and monitoring to digital twin creation. So tonight we will hear about Michael's presentation about 30 minutes, and after that is about 45 until 60 minutes, and then we will open the question and answer session for 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, Michael, whenever you're ready, the time is yours. Miss Elizabeth, is Michael
Yes,
is here?
yes, Mr. Michael,
Michael?
you may
Okay, you
share
hear me now?
your screen.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
we hear you.
very clear.
Okay,
Great.
okay,
Thank
please,
you.
Michael.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to discuss and show you guys a bit of our work and sort of what it's all about, and sort of, in my view, the future of historic preservation at scale. It starts out with sort of some of the concepts that we've been working on for a few years. So, as Johannes mentioned, I'm an architect, and been fortunate enough to work in many parts of the world. And one of the things that that I saw during my time is that the scale of buildings is growing. Newer materials, everything's going up faster, more infrastructure, buildings going up, with rapid speed. And at the same time, there are fewer and fewer technical people left behind to manage all of these buildings. And so the numbers are getting smaller on that side, and the two things are very, very much not in alignment. And so I see places in all over the world where things are falling off buildings and killing people, and they're starting to pass some facade laws to protect cities from these things that fall off. But one of the areas, obviously, from a personal standpoint, I grew up in Spain, and I used to go to the Alhambra, so the fortress in Granada, and it was one of the first places that I learned architecture. And so, I'm very proud to be working on the Alhambra now to help protect it. And so I'll show you a little bit about that. But the product really comes out of this sort of belief and this understanding that, again, with more buildings and the sort of costs of everything in terms of restoration being hard, we need a way that we can identify what the problems are, and then we can get into a way that we can first catalog everything and then make decisions about how to preserve and how to fix things. So, I sort of make the analogy that as a product, what we do, we're like a knee scan that you get before you go to the doctor, right? So all of you are the doctor in this analogy. And what our product does is basically it scans your knee and it says you have a ligament tear, and then you go to the doctor, in this case you, and you guys decide, well, in this case, what we need to do is 1, 2, and 3. So I'll share my screen and I'll show you a couple projects. But, at its core, what we do is we use drones to capture a very large amount of data on a building. So in many cases, for example, in Sagrada Familia, the number is 60 million images. So it's a huge number of data. On an average building, it might be 50,000 images, something like that. And so the point is, someone might ask me at the beginning, well, why not LiDAR, right? So LiDAR is good to get a digital twin, but you're never going to be able to see defects on a building with LiDAR. And it's just, the point cloud doesn't have that level of detail. And so what we use is photogrammetry, but really, really tight. So 90 to 90% overlaps up close. So everything is flown from a very close distance around any structure. And this allows us to pick up every detail. And then we use AI, computer vision, and a bunch of algorithms that we've created in-house to basically find all the defects, decide what's critical and moderate, and then pass that on to a professional, to you people. So I'll just show you a couple projects, and I'll start out with something simple like in, let me just see where I'm going to start here. So let's start out with something like, okay, this is a church in New York City. It's sort of one of the older churches in Manhattan, but nothing. It's not a large church. There's anything terribly specific about it. But what we have is we've created this digital twin where you can see all the details on the building, and then we can turn off filters and say, let's look for critical, moderate, and mild defects on this building. Everything that you see, and now this building will be covered in red dots. And so what you see here is that these are each a defect that the building has located on the building, and they tend to be cracks. They tend to be mortar joints where the mortar has come out, or they tend to be broken glass, or they tend to be something. So this building has many, many defects. But if we go up here, we've got a major crack in this corner, and we can go and say, here's a crack running up this wall and coming back down the other side. So what this has actually done is it's snapped this wall in half, and it's separating the wall from the roof, and this arch is sort of seating. So everything is a little bit out of alignment, although this you wouldn't be able to see from the street. So this is quite a significant issue in this case. And what we're able to do is say, let's go look at the same view, and now we'll see it in X-ray vision. And so what you have here is the view of the outside, the view of the inside, and then the view of the defect itself. So here's this crack that I just showed you going up the wall. In yellow, you have the crack as it moves through the wall. And then here is the inside now of that crack as it reaches the interior wall. And so we're able to take that data, find the same crack, and then if I zoom back out, you can see all the damage that's been caused by the specific flaw. And so again, not the building type. You can do this on new buildings, old buildings, any type of building. So the first point is really just to take a structure, use our data and our technology to find everything that's happening on it. And at first glance, you can see all of this data, and you can understand better what's critical. So, we only have 33 critical things on the building and 125 moderate. So the majority of this is quite mild, and you don't really need to do anything about it in the short term, but you have at least an understanding of what's happening at every point. And you're able to go through the wall and then arrive at the interior and look around and also see defects here. So as we move up the wall, you're going to see there's cracking and things at the top. You can pick on any location inside and see the same types of defects. So in this case, it's areas where there's cracks that have developed along this edge. And these are obviously things that if you at least know where they are, and you can see this crack runs down along this edge and then down to the edge of this corner of this detailing between one floor and another. And then further up, you can see that there's major cracking and damage on this column. So we're able to identify everything from outside to inside on the building, and we're able to move back out and see the building from the outside. And then if you're looking for anything in specific, you're able to filter immediately and see what you're looking for. So if we say we're looking for, we clear this and we say, for example, we're going to look for broken glass on this building, we just click on broken glass and we filter for broken glass and we clear the moderate. And now we're going to filter for broken glass and we're going to come up with a list of all broken glass. So in this case, it's 1 critical, 1 moderate, and 22 mild pieces of glass. And here's all of your broken glass. So again, you have a window that's broken and it has a measurement of the window. In this case, it's critical because it has shards of broken glass. And then you say, show me that location, and it'll instantly take you in the model to show you where that broken glass is located. So in the old days, we would have to make a list somewhere of, oh, I think there's some broken glass. We have 1 or 2 pieces here. In this case, in seconds, you're able to see every piece of broken glass on the whole building. You have measurements, and you can instantly go and send this to your glass contractor or to whoever might be helping you on this and get prices for getting all your glass fixed. So again, 1 little piece of glass, we know the location, we know the size of the defect, and it can instantly be taken care of. So whether it's cracking or defects or things on the roof or major issues in cracking, I'll show you the Alhambra in a second, and there you obviously have a lot of major issues, and the idea is really to understand if you have 800 cracks on a building, you know you have 800 cracks, and then when one new one appears, you know which one's new and which one's old. And that also is an enormously important way of understanding. Here we have something quite small, but it's a chip in this glass. And again, location, very easy to find anything, any part of the building. And you can see that this is all the way in the back at the very top, not something that would be easy to find using manual systems. So when we take this project and we say on the outside of the building, the system found 3,946 defects, your first question might be, well, why do I need to have that number when I can't do anything about it? So the most important thing our system does is it'll take defects on a building and compare them from 1 year to the next. So here you have a big tower, 23,000 defects, and we're able to take the comparison from 1 year to another and do a comparison, and that allows us to see what's happening on these issues as time goes on, and the defects seem to be clear at the moment. So if I take you and I show you a little bit how a normal historic project works. I would first show you Sagrada Familia, and we have the Gaudi, the great Gaudi church where the Pope was just there last week, and they inaugurated it, becoming the world's tallest historic structure. And so we are moving through. We've done so many different pieces of the building, but if I take you to the Passion facade, which is the sort of, in many ways, the most advanced part of this project. And again, we go through and we show you that you have an existing section of facade here, and so much detail, so many cracks, so many flaws. So in this, you've got 84,000 defects. If you knew how complicated this this facade is. And at the end of the day, you say, well, you know, these kinds of cracks that we're able to find that are running up and around these sections in one piece is quite a network of cracking or whatever. Or we find hairline cracks between sections in the mortar joint or something that's coming loose, like this kind of thing. And all of this works together to give you an enormous amount of detail. So how do we do this? We use, you know, again, drones with 90% overlap, and we're flying very close to the building. So in most cases, 3 to 5 meters. And we're just taking image after image, and then we're going in a pattern and just capturing, again, 90% overlap is a lot. So we're able to see a lot of detail on these kinds of things. In many cases, the mortar joints that appear, and you can just work your way through different sections and see the detail of what the system finds, and also obviously of the beauty of the architecture. So, you know, the level of complexity, there's old stone, there's new stone, there's stone that's, you know, has areas where some of the mortar just doesn't connect in pieces, and some of this does tend to crumble off over time. And then we have very mild things like, you know, hairline cracks that the system will still pick up. And then obviously inside, you're in areas where sometimes it's very complicated to see what's happening over here or back in these corners. And we're able to, because of the abilities of the drone, we can fly in close and capture some image in different areas. Here you have a piece of stone that's coming loose, and this is obviously something that needs to be resealed and taken care of. The drones themselves are not any new technology, and so we use enterprise drones that are off the shelf. We tend to use DJI drones that cost maybe $8,000 for a drone that takes a 8K image and a thermal image at the same time. So all of our stuff has thermal imagery on it as well. And in many cases, the detailing of the thermal image is quite important. And in other cases, like that image I just showed you, where you don't really see anything at all. But the idea is to be able to combine all of the data points that we can provide and give us complete a picture of this facade, so that when somebody's doing the work, they're able to understand what areas and what sections of the building are most at risk of having something come off or whatever over time. And so this is one of the two facades, the two main facades of the building. They each have 4 towers in the front, and they're sort of attached to the nave at the ends, and they provide a lot of you know, natural beauty and a lot of messages from Gaudi on the interiors, which is always interesting to see. Here you can see the complexity in some of these areas of these pieces. These columns that are very thin are also angled inward like a root and a combination of a tree form. And so in here, we're able to pick up, you know, small things that are difficult to identify, like loose materials, even in a piece that's not that high off the ground. But being able to understand all of this at scale is an enormous undertaking. And, you know, these guys, when they're flying, when they're doing the work here, what they used to do was have people scaling off the building. They would take a picture of something. They would come back to the office, and the architect would say, well, that's something quite serious. Let's go back and, you know, and do some work on it. And then they weren't able to find the defect again. So in many cases, it's easy to identify it the first time, but then to be able to come back. And you can imagine when you look at some of these things, as you go higher, it becomes harder. So you would be able to see it. And these tend to be areas where there's, you know, tiles and things that are coming loose. And we just want to make sure that we identify all of any kind of looseness before it becomes an issue. And again, it's for us, it's one advantage is we get to see all this beautiful work that's really not available to the public. And so this part is quite exciting. And then on the other side, we have the original facade, which is what they call the birth facade. And this is the one that Gaudi got to see completed while he was alive. So even though he designed everything, you can see that this is much more of a manually designed, the sculpture everything is much more detailed. There's much more sort of threadbare elements. So even though there's a lot more sort of sculptural instead of sleek angles, it has much more small level detail. Again, still very hard to manage, but a different type of building altogether. As you go through, you can see the incredible detail between these pieces and what comes behind it, and all of the pieces that fit together to form this incredible mosaic of a building in this case. And so what we're trying to do is, again, help them identify what could be more serious, what are the issues that could hit them. So here, again, you're able to see a significant issue on this window, even though it's designed in a sort of semicircular and sort of descending arch pattern. The issue here is obviously this kind of cracking that can be at a risk. And then we can say, show us the location, and it'll send us out to the side of the building here where you're able to see the location of this type of defect. So in most of these cases, it's just about identifying, imagine identifying this one piece of tile that's clearly loose and about to fall off. And then you can say the location of this is going to be up all the way near the top of the building. There's no way that you're going to be able to do this manually. And here we're going through another section of the building, interesting, and coming back. So this is not only is it up top, but it's also on the back side of the building. So here you can see where that tile is located, no problem finding it anymore. And you're able to identify that that's something significant that needs to be taken care of. So in all of these cases, we find so much depth of analysis, so many areas that require some inspection. And obviously for the architects who use this every day, the way they're able to do this is to take a defect like this one, for example. The architect will make a quick sketch, send his scaler up there to make a fix. The guy then takes a scan of the defect. We have a QR code. He then takes an image. And so when you open up this defect, you see the defect, and you're able to see the fix. So the architect would just add this to the repair job, and instantly it creates a QR code for that defect, and then room to create a historical. So a video can go in there, images, and you can have a silo of this one defect for the coming years. So the name of the material, the type of material that was used, and all of the different issues that are needed to be addressed, the sketch from the architect, and everything involved to make the repair and also track it over time. So, 2 years later, we might have a defect that was fixed and is failing again, and we may have another one that was fixed and isn't failing, and so we know what type of repairs are working better than others. And that obviously has a lot of value as well. And so again, loose tiles that could fall off and fall down 150 meters to the ground is not what you want to have happen. So in this case, again, up very high in the building, and you're able to get that piece removed. So again, it's exciting work from our part to work on something like this. We also have another one of Gaudi's buildings, which is, if you've been to Barcelona, it's a smaller 5-story apartment building originally, but again, a very beautiful building with a lot of manual railings that were made out of sheet panels, and there's defects. A lot of this stonework was carved by hand, and anywhere along the edges here, you'd be able to see the critical defects because there's all kinds of material that's coming loose. It's quite a lot of cracks and things that have been identified on these walls that need to be repaired quite quickly. So we have a lot of cracking. This being a good example, you can see there's a crack in this stone that's running along this edge here, and this needs to be sealed to keep it from falling. And they have had some issues on items that have fallen and things like that. So obviously not what you want to have happen. But again, this is a beautiful building that we're able to pull plans off of this. So the architect working on this building from our work at no additional cost. We can get full elevations, and when we do interiors as well, we can get full sections of the building instead of having them be hand drawn. Let's say that you were doing a historic project somewhere in your region. You would be able to have a drone pilot from our team come out and scan your building, send it up. We would then do the defect work in the cloud, and then obviously at the end of the day, you would also have plans. If we go to details here, you have all the drawings of the elevations of Casa Mila, which is obviously not an easy project to do manually, right? It's almost, in many cases, these are impossible to draw by hand. So this type of project, again, is something that we're excited to work. And, we have other Gaudi buildings we've already done, but these are the two main ones that we've worked on. And then another project that we're really, really proud of is the Alhambra. And so this, as a project, we're starting to do, and we're working our way through the building. And, we're doing parts and pieces at a time of this incredibly complex levels of work. So here we have one of the towers in one of the, this is sort of was the main Sultan's palace. And so again, when we go through, you can see you've got cracks on the exterior wall here that are running down this wall. You have cracks here on this wall. And so when you open up a section of crack and you want to see a defect, you can look at this crack from the outside and see that sadly 100 years ago, they started using some cement to fix these walls, which they should have never done. But you have old cracks. All the cracks that are existing on this building are identified. So if next year there was a new crack that formed here, we would be able to tell the difference between the older ones and the new ones. And then from the same crack, you can go, through the wall and end up inside and rotate yourself around so you're able to see, the networks of defects on these walls, but also just the great beauty of the space and everything that comes with it. And so, in these cases, we're able to, pick on a defect and again, go and see the level of complexity of our analysis within the overall whole, right? So we have these defects. Let me just open one up here, and you can see cracks, and in a very technical space where you're able to see. This is incredibly hard for an AI system or any visual system to find, but we're able to identify all of these, defects in this incredible mosaic. So here's a crack running up the wall, and again, we're able to tell which ones are only interior surface cracks, and then which ones are cracks that need are running through and to the outside. So in this case, we have a crack that starts on the inside and does run to the outer wall, and we can follow that. We can track this through from inside to outside. Again, the level of complexity in this, all of this work is very hard. So doing it, using AI and then having the overlap of different images, being able to see these things from different angles makes it. Really adds a lot of level to the technology, and so makes us very proud that in this case we can get something to this level of complexity. Now here we have these walls. This was like, again, where the Sultan would sit in this space, and so no one could see his face, only the back. They could see him in silhouette. And he would sit in these arches here with the light streaming through. This inspection was done at night. And then you have this beautiful roof that's inlaid with all this material of different things. And for us, we're able to go through the roof and pass onto the area above, and we can get into above the ceiling and see how that material, how it worked initially. So, here we have this structure of above the roof, which is basically it's been scaffolded up, and we have areas where there's we're making sure that nothing moves. So we've created this this layer that's sort of like a flat plane in yellow, which is actually not a flaw. It's just a plane that we've created so we can have mark points. And if this roof moves, if the ceiling moves even a centimeter, a millimeter downward, we would be able to tell that difference. And so in this space, it allows us to really get down into seeing, the inside of this old walls are in one type of material. And then as we move through into the space below, you're looking at a different type of material. And so all of this allows us to look down between the layers of a building like this and and see the great complexity of it. So again, this is something for us that's really really cool. And again, the pricing on most of this work is very reasonable. So compared to a LiDAR scan, in most cases, we are about the same price, but the advantage in our case is that we find the defects, we're able to, compare them over time. And this means that on any kind of historic building, the value is very high. So this is a monastery in France for the National Monument Organization of France. And in this case, we've got a building that's quite old and been bad state of disrepair. And here we have 72,000 defects, but again, critical 36. So we have some areas where the building is in worse shape than in others, and we're able to take that and show where cracks are that need to be dealt with sooner rather than later, and compare these cracks over time as they grow. So here you can see a wall that has a lot of different cracks on it, but what they want to understand is which cracks are old, which ones are new, and can we catalog all this information? Well, on this kind of project, it's just fundamental to understand everything that's happening, see what areas of the cornices and all of that are in good shape and which ones are in bad, and identify all these materials. So our system works on any type of material, whether it's plaster, stone, wood, adobe, like you saw on the Alhambra, and any other kind of material we can find defects on. So we find missing screws, we find rot in wood, so we can find termite defects, things that are quite mild. Going back to the Alhambra, there was a section in the interior of one where the system did pick up termite damage underneath, at the roof line, and so that's something that we are also able to identify quite up close, and important elements to be able to help with. And as I spin this around, we're able to see areas in these incredibly complicated zones where some of this material is in bad shape, that over time you can see damage that's happening in wood, parts that are wood, damage in materials, and also just general sort of deterioration. So in these kinds of images, you can see, again, levels of complexity that are quite extreme and really give us an ability to see things up close and provide an incredible amount of detail. So for us, it's, again, really exciting work, crack in wood here, and it'll all be picked up in one way or another. Again, another space where you have some significant cracks. Here there's one, this is the standard pattern over an arch. We get this arch pattern and then a crack that runs up the wall. And so we're able to pick up all this information and identify on a larger wall where all of this is running. And then finally, as I wrap up, and I'd love to take some questions, we work at a variety of different scales. So this is an old historic Gothic style school in Spain. And again, it's a complicated building. So there's hundreds of broken glass on this. We have areas where they're trying to just protect the school and the building, as it were. But in many cases, it's just, what they're trying to do is identify their areas where there might be something loose that could fall off, and at first glance, obviously do damage to the children that go to the school. And so in some cases, these have been sealed, and then the seal's starting to fail. And in some cases here, you have new levels of cracking. And so all of this kind of work that we're able to identify over time is really just here so that someone can manage a building more efficiently. And with the limited resources, they can take something like this, and this with some quick sealing can be in good shape for a long time. But if ignored, at some point that piece will fall off. And we're trying to preserve history as best we can. And obviously we always have, in many cases, limited budgets. So, budgets are always an issue. But if we have an enormous building and we don't know where to begin, the cost is going to be much higher just to guess, or even worse, to just ignore everything. So when we're able to catalog what we're dealing with, like in this area, there was some serious damage to these railings here. And you can see all in this one area, there's these kinds of cracks and this kind of stuff. They're able to get in here, and this was probably the most serious thing we found. So they're able to get in here, build a scaffold and do some work in this area and fix it. Whereas in other areas, they could at least monitor what they're dealing with from time to time. And, any building in the world really, or any kind of monument or structure or temple or any kind of building that can be in some way at least cataloged, identified, and then protected is an important place to start. And that's what we're here to offer. And we would love to show you further in specific details or any kind of building. The way our process normally works is I just said a historic church in Eastern England, in Exning, and they contacted me 2 days ago and said, we have a building and some parts of a cornice fell off, and we need to do an inspection to see how bad the result is. And so we are sending a drone pilot there with a flight plan to do the plan. We collect all the data, and then we deliver plans, sections, and elevations. So now they'll have a full record of what's happening. And on that information also will be applied the defects, so they can turn this into their historical society and be able to see what the resulting issues are and what the fixes are, and that everybody can deal with it all at once. We've done some work for UNESCO this is one that we did a couple of years ago, and it's a fort in Oman, and it's a beautiful old structure. And the work that we were doing here was really to help the community identify that this fort, as UNESCO has identified, one of the issues they have is if someone comes and writes let's say an 8-page report that says there's, lots of defects on the building and needs help, it's sometimes hard to get funding for a vague report, right? So when we're able to put something together that shows individual defects and the total numbers of cracks and all the things that are happening throughout, we have a much better chance of, with measured drawings and with all the information, of getting down to information to really understand what are the issues that are defining this project and how to make things, help to put this sort of funding in place to take it to the next step. And so on these types of projects, they're very beautiful, and we're trying to be helpful in protecting. And again, at the first level, it's really just about understanding the scope and the materials and where these issues are, where these buildings are failing over time, so they can be protected. So that's a little bit about how our system works. We again, in pricing, we tend to offer a one-time project. I'm an architect, so one of the things that's really important to me is that you be able to take a project, and I would say the cost of this is $5,000 to do everything involved in the scoping and inspecting of a project. We don't have subscription fees. We don't have storage fees. We don't have any annual add-on prices. And 10 years from now, if the people handling these projects want to come back and see their buildings, how they looked in 2025, they're here waiting for them. And so that's kind of like one object price, and that's those are our only costs associated with these. So I will stop in a moment here and open this up to any questions that you may have. We do buildings of every type around the world, and so someone might ask me, do you only work in some part of the world? And the answer is no. So we currently work in 18 countries. We do older buildings, we do newer buildings, we do sections of towns, like an old section of a town. This is in London, and we have a section of old carriage houses that were inspected by us for this whole section of town. So the idea being that we're able to identify issues on one building where they're cracking or any kind of defect, so that they can be properly assessed and repaired. And then secondarily, you have a digital twin of this part of this section of this neighborhood, and we're able to take all that information and use it to, at some level, we're able to do thermal energy assessments, where the energy inefficiency is. In many cases, these buildings are poorly insulated, and so we're able to identify all of these things for our clients and for municipal governments, and for anybody who'd be in need of any services to help protect their communities and protect our history. So that's a little bit about how this works, and would love to take some questions if you have them. I'll stop sharing, but I can open this back up again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Very, very good presentation. From the Michael presentation and from Inspekt AI, we can learn a lot of things. We can see how the Inspekt AI work on the Bahla Fort and Oman, Collegiate School, and also the Alhambra Monastery, and also the very beautiful Gaudi Church, right? From the presentation, we learn how to the Inspekt AI maximize the use of the drones, and also using the photogrammetry, digital twin, something like that, and put in on the web how to inform for the future information, so on. Okay, I want to highlight that from the presentation, we learned that even using the drones, we can have the architect to identify and detect any further defect or any all kind material defect on the buildings. So it is very interesting, and I see that there is some question for you, Michael.
If I may, just 1 second to respond to what you just said for 20 seconds. One of the reasons that the AI is so fundamental is today we have a lot of just in Spain, there's probably about 13,000 building inspection companies that use drones. But what they do is they fly around and maybe take 50 images of a building, right? Because that's what a human can look at. So they fly from maybe 50 meters away. And we would do the same building. We'll take 100,000 images of that building from very close. And it's that great volume of data that really helps us to get to the analysis. So thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, that's also my first question. Actually, how many images you took when you inspect the building, and you just answered that's 100,000.
Well, Sagrada Familia was 60 million images.
60 million images.
Yes.
So 60 million is for just one building. It's for the exterior.
That's right. That's a lot.
With the 90% overlap of the image, that's very tight. Okay, Michael, I think we start with the first question. Is from the Mr. Kiran from the India. Is there any correlation between the number of critical defects and the building's construction period for what do you explain?
In relation to the type of building? Is that the question? Yeah. Obviously, Sagrada Familia is a very, very unique case, right? Because it's stretching the boundaries of engineering. I mean, when Gaudi designed it, there weren't even skyscrapers existing at the time, and he was building with new materials and, not in the old sort of Gothic way, or it was all very, very innovative. The structure is completely unique. And so in this case, you are going to get some movement in materials, and so that happens. But when we do newer buildings, sadly in today's world, when we inspect a new tower in Bangkok, we find just as many defects as you do on an old building, probably more, right? So newer buildings, it's always the joint seal that's failing, and we find that over and over and over and over. So big panels of glass, and then the joint is always failing in between the glass.
Okay. For the next question is asking about how the technology can recording about the changes post-natural disaster before and after. What do you think about this, Michael?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you have in earthquakes and storms and things like that, our system can detect the before and after, before the earthquake, after the earthquake, and these are defects that we can compare perfectly well. And we've done this on many buildings around the world. So we're able to provide a report that will show different defect types, and this is one of our common findings. So for sure, it's something we would do at each time. We actually have a client in Florida who's an insurance adjuster, and what they're trying to do right now is figure out how to take buildings before and then compare them. When the damage surely is coming from the next hurricane. They're able to see that data in a more effective way. And so this is what we're trying to help with. I was just going to show you, we have a project here in Thailand that went through a very mild earthquake by most people's accounting, but it's still earthquake damage. So you can see here's along a column line, and there's a defect here, some light bubbling. And as you get closer, you can see that the defect has grown significantly. So that's the size change. Here we have a mild crack that's turned into something serious. Here we have a crack that's growing quite a lot and expanding out. Here we have some hairline cracking that has doubled. In this case, doesn't look like it's changed all that much, but you can see from one inspection to the other, here you have hairline cracking along a column line that has gotten quite a bit worse, for example.
Okay, Michael, another question. Is it applicable for the more landscape side, not just the buildings, such as the ruin of the village, something like that? Another question.
It's applicable for basically any material, but I didn't quite understand the question. I'm sorry.
The question is if the technology can be for the more landscape type, not building the high tower or something like that. For example,
right. So yeah, I just got asked for a project for they're doing some areas, some high value crops that have some damage on them, and would our system be able to find that kind of damage? In other words, diseased plants as opposed to non. And so our system will pick that up. I mean, I'm an architect, and our market is really every building in the world. But we're doing wind turbines, we're doing dams in Spain, we're doing bridges in different parts of the world, and so there's really no limit to what we are able to do. In Panama, there was a big fire underneath a bridge in the main crossing for the Bridge of the Americas, and there was an enormous fireball that came up, and we're currently doing an inspection on that to identify the condition of all of the steel beams underneath this bridge.
Okay, Michael, is also answered from the questions, and the next question is from Kata. This is the question about does your AI model automatically classify detect damage according to specific damage?
Yeah, so the system will find all the defects, and then we have some logic that goes into deciding what's critical. In other words, if it's outward facing, if you have a piece of material that's loose on the outside of a building, the system will identify that this is something that can fall to the ground, hit a person, hit the building, and that's identified as critical. And then moderate is based on size and again on risk factors. So the answer is we do have our AI will identify automatically all of the critical, moderate, and mild. And then at the end of the system, we do come back with human engineers who review the data to make sure that what's critical is critical and what's moderate is moderate. The way we have almost fully automated 3D technology. In other words, the images are uploaded into a system. A model starts to create a digital twin, and then those defects are applied to that digital twin, and that's how we're able to come back to that exact location time after time. And so some of our bigger clients like the Alhambra and Sagrada Familia, we have a 10-year contract to do an inspection every year and compare every defect and see where changes are happening.
Okay, Michael, just the next question related with the previous one. Is your work in Inspekt AI can be export or combined with another inspection technique?
Yes. So we have clients that are using BIM models already, and we are able to provide, we're able to take our imagery and attach it to the BIM model surfaces. So if someone's created a BIM model or already has a photogrammetry, and then we do an inspection or we use their data to capture that, we would be able to do that.
Yeah, it is possible to combine with the thermography for structural assessment, for example.
Is it a model of an assessment or is it just individual? I mean, we can break down, in other words, on thermography, we're able to find defects and we do apply them to our models. So we do find, we do full thermography models in some cases. And yes, we do find all those types of defects, but that tends to be, it tends to be a specific service aimed at, for example, if I just show you, this is a modern project, but we have a thermal inspections, and then our reporting just identifies areas where this building is leaking, specific areas where the defects are particularly bad. And so when we go into this in defects, we're able to use the thermography to identify zones where you can see on this frame there's significant leaking happening here and here. This joint is completely giving way, so heat escaping, same here, heat escaping, glass, and all of these zones are identified in one characteristic or another. And then, of course, we also use thermal to identify defects that might be happening like on tile and materials like that. So if I go into this is a modern building, a Calatrava building in Valencia that we've inspected. And when we open up this defect here, you'll see that we have tiling that from a distance, very hard to see. And when you go to the thermal imagery, you can see very clearly that defect is loose tiles. And then when we go back to the vision and we get in really close, you can see where the cracking kind of moves along. This obviously is important because identifying this type of defect is hard, and once these things fall off, they're very dangerous. Before we started working on this building, there was a scaler that fell off this building and died, unfortunately, and they decided to switch from using manual inspections with scaling to something more advanced that can be protected. So that's a little bit about how our technology works. Sorry, next question.
Okay, next question is about, yes, you work mostly about the buildings, right? The building, the almost a kind of building. So the next question from Ochi, this technology can use to detect for the very wide, large area, for example, a corridor straight for 6 kilometers or something like that. Is it possible to use this technology to find looking for defect or any work there for the very large area?
So yeah, yes, we can. If sort of the goal is to get something from further distance and not get quite as close. There are always ways of as long as we have the data, we can always crunch it and break it down. So we have buildings where we with enormous roofs and where we found thousands of little missing rivets on a metal roof and things like that. So at scale, we can do any kind of building, and so these types of plants that are quite large are also part of our our work. And then we can do tunnels underground and things like that. So in this case, this is like a tunnel under a port in Barcelona, and they didn't even know where this went, and we're able to follow this tunnel along and then identify all the the major defects that are on this kind of stuff. So we're able to see where rebar is coming through and continue on through this. You can imagine this is just relevant. I mean, we have old historic tunnels that move through the ground on older buildings, like castles tend to have some sort of escape tunnels, so we can identify those in many cases as well. The problem in this case, they literally didn't know where this thing was. So they had an entrance and an exit, but it was us who were able to identify for them the exact location on the plan. They're putting a new building up, and they didn't know where this tunnel sat exactly. So it's a challenging project to identify. Here we have the start, here we have the finish, and in between you have an area full of shipping containers. So a challenge.
It's a very challenging work, right? Okay. It's very, very challenging. Okay. I think this last question for the blogs, from the blogs is talking about apart of technical thing. Do you any limitation for this technology? How the limit, how the boundary of this technology?
So the limitations are based around the quality of the data, right? I mean, if we, as camera technology gets better, then we'll be able to improve in that way. And look, the long-term vision of something like this is to really have an understanding globally of, like, this type of material has this type of repair that doesn't work, and this type of repair that does work. And a 100-year-old stone that comes from this quarry is holding up like this, or the cracks are expanding over time. We're going to have this incredible library of data to help historians identify every type of material and get a much more depth. And then, at some point, we'll probably have a two-sided marketplace where historians who want to help work on a project can log in and see a project that's been done in France or something, and they can offer some reporting on those types of historic projects and become part of this community that can help to, provide better and better data and protect buildings, more efficiently. So I think it'll be exciting when we get to where, some of our associates and team members from Indonesia, for example, can be working on the Eiffel Tower or something and helping to preserve, buildings that are in another part of the world. So that's sort of the future of kind of building a larger community for this work.
Okay. I think we can open the cam or direct. Maybe the audience want to ask you directly. Maybe Kata, Mr. Kata, can you open the cam and give the question directly to Michael? Hello. Oh, Kanado, maybe Ochi, Mr. Kata, Ochi, or Kairan. Maybe you can give the direct question to the Michael.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Hi, this is Kiran.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Kiran.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kiran.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. And it inspired me a lot. So to be frank, I got an emotion to join with you right away.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And you mentioned so many sites and so many periods. I mean, divergent sites and divergent periods. So can you have any report which highlights such case studies in an abstract way, so that we can discuss those things with fellow group members or batchmates like that? Because we also plan to go for in India, we plan to review this 11th century, 12th century, those period. So it will be helpful for us to have such case studies. That's why. Is there any such reports available for us?
Yeah, I can give you some reporting. I can get you access to a dashboard so you can see how the system works after the meeting. If anyone requests an access to a couple projects, I could facilitate that for sure. Obviously, as you know, it's first, for example, on the Alhambra, they did a digital twin of the whole building, of the whole fortress. And it took a long time. And just when they finished, they realized that this wasn't going to help them to really analyze and understand the building as it changed. And so it's this year-on-year comparison, which really gives someone the ability. You might have an old historic building, and we see there's 1,000 small flaws on it that aren't going to be fixed, or maybe even a major crack. But the important thing is understanding, are these things moving or are they stable? We've done projects where there's a lot of cracks, but they don't change at all over time. And we've done others where the thing is like the Sagrada Familia, because it's growing so much and changing, and the weight structures are adapting. There are things that crack and change a lot from one year to the next. And those are the areas that we're trying to help them to protect. You have one tower, a new tower in the middle that's the tallest tower, and it's supported by these columns that run down through the middle, and then other pieces are attached to the side. So when you're adding more weight in the middle, it's putting more stresses in those connectors to the exterior. And a lot of those things are really about understanding how much does that move over time. In the old days, they used to have lasers, right? And you would put 5 or 10 lasers on a building and measure, the lasers would measure the distance between one point and the other. You can look at our system, and it's basically the equivalent of 100,000 lasers, because every defect talks to each other in terms of difference. So we can triangulate all of that from one to the other.
Yeah, that you highlighted this one, the glass ceiling, especially thermal. Such techniques are very useful for us. Yeah, such things. Thank you for the presentation.
And again, everybody, don't hesitate to reach out if you have specific questions over time. I'm happy to help you walk your client through if there's a way of getting something into a budget. We've also, like I said, we've worked with UNESCO, who are managing to get new budgets out of communities through the use of this technology. And it can be very hard. I mean, this is probably our biggest challenge, right? It's how to get costings for all the work, all the stuff that we have to protect. But what I can promise you is that having this level of information, any type of building, it changes how you respond to it. So I was talking yesterday, I had a meeting with a condominium. This is not a historic building at all, but it's a condominium in Florida. And so you have, 20 old guys from New York in a condominium board, and they're like, don't want to spend any money on anything. And normally when this contractor presents a proposal, they say, we're going to think about it for a year. And here we were in a meeting, and I showed them the building. And while we were in the meeting, they approved $1 million worth of repairs. So sometimes when you see everything in front of you, it really opens the eyes of those who have the purse strings, right? It makes it much easier to release money.
Okay, Karen, any more questions?
Oh, one more thing.
Okay.
Sorry for this.
Yeah.
Have you been to Malacca, the Formosa Fort, 15th century?
Have I been to where?
Malacca Fort.
Malacca. I have not been to Malacca. I've been all around that region, but not specifically Malacca.
But it has the 15th century fort, Formosa Fort, and they have the 16th Dutch clock. So, I want to ask you, have you done such? Suppose that is only partial architecture. Basing on that, can we reconstruct somewhat, extend the construction area, modeling that landscape? Because we don't get some maps on that. So at least basing on these drones, images, basing on your previous experience on the other sides, can you extend the map of that area? Reimagining the situation of that area.
Absolutely. I mean, we certainly can add a very detailed amount of information to your current the current data set that you have. And I'm happy if you send me an email. I'm happy to take a call and look at it individually.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I will send. Can you share your email ID in chat box so that will be.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I'm happy to help anybody who's got individual projects or whatever issue I can. We're trying to build a great community, and again, different parts of the world, different materials, and different conditions of funding and all that. But there's always a way to, as long as we have communities and government officials and people that understand that these buildings are important. There's always a way to break that logjam and get some funds to help. Because again, in the end, it saves you a lot of money. If you know what's happening and you can, in some cases, just prop something up before it falls, and then you either lose the building or the structure, the monument, or you spend a lot more to preserve it later on. Really sad sometimes. We just did a project in Dubrovnik in Croatia recently, and we were it was a hotel on the seaside, and just in front was an old church, and literally all the detailing on the church had all fallen off, and it was like literally a box, and the steeple had fallen off, and all of the detailing around the church, and it was like a real sad thing that they're talking about now spending millions of euros to try to preserve it, but it's never the same as if you can preserve the real thing. It's a lot better than trying to fix it afterwards.
Yeah, thank you for raising the church. I want to add one point. In Malacca, you can witness the 1750s Dutch church, 1750.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is it. So you must visit that place.
Okay. That sounds great.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Maybe Miss Ochi Mutiara, you can give the direct question to Michael.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hi, Michael. Thank you for sharing your awesome work. So I have a question regarding hosting. So when hosting high resolution drone inspection data on a web platform that you just showed us, I suppose there's might be a tension between keeping a fine GSD for details and keeping the data set light enough to host or maybe stream online. From your experience, how do you get that balance? For example, keeping a full resolution, keeping the resolution of the data, and then by serving a lighter version or using level of detail and tiling. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. So no, great question. I mean, this is part of the value of our dashboard, right? So we have a lot of clients that say, "Can you also send me, 500,000 images?" And we can send it to them. They download it into their own hard drive. But the real value of our system is with our dashboard, you can open up any area, avoid these sort of latency issues, and go right to the data that you need. And so managing your way around millions of images like on Sagrada and being able to open it up to that specific defect is kind of the magic of our system. And like I said, even though we have hosting costs, of course, over time, we've got thousands of projects at this point. It's part of our cost of doing business. And I don't want, as an architect, one of the things I found most frustrating was, you have these young designers, and they'll give you something, you got to pay hosting, or you got to pay some subscription cost afterwards. And my point was always like, when we do a project for a historical society and they paid for that project, they need to have access to it for life. So in 20 years, they can still come back to the original inspection and see what it looked like at that point. And so, these are all the costs of doing business built in. But one of our main goals is just to make it as easy as possible for everybody to use the data, and then to go deeper, and they can break it down into, here's something we have 2 maintenance people, and they're going to work on this part this year, and that part, and you can create projects and you can create ways of controlling the work so that you have a way of seeing that the defects have been fixed or at least checked. And you have dashboards that make it very easy to follow projects throughout their life.
Mr. Chief? Hello, Mr. Chief?
Hello.
Okay.
Hi,
Okay, thank you.
you're on mute.
You are here, Mr. Chief.
Hi, you're on mute.
Hello.
Ah, there you go. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
giving me the time.
Okay. Another technical question from Chata. Mr. Chata, are you on? You can open mic, Mr. Chata. Okay. Basically, Mr. Chata asking about this. The AI model can be applied on the say something like wood, clay, or stone vernacular building materials. Is it possible to looking for different type of damage on this different materials?
Yes. So we had a project about a year ago on in New Mexico on Adobe. They were looking for wormholes, and we were able to identify a pattern of small little dots on a large, and we identified the areas where they have wormholes. We have, in the UK, we're doing these large stone walls, and we're not only do we have to identify the size of a piece of stone, but then we use digital modeling to create a measured piece of that stone, so they can then send that to the rock quarry to have a stone replacement made. And so all of this is like a way of tying this into simplifying. You can imagine you have a wall of a castle or something that's this one piece of stone is crumbling, and maybe it's 40 meters off the ground, and this allows you to be able to get that information of that piece of material and then create a replacement and get it to site without having to climb up there, measure it, and make sure that it's right. So yeah, we can work on any type of material. And like I said, someone asked about topography stuff. We can do that as well. But our focus is on buildings and infrastructure, but we do every type of material.
Okay. Okay, Michael. Sometimes in the raw wooden materials, mostly in Asia we're using the very raw wooden material. Is it possible to detect any damage or defect on the wooden raw material? Because mostly the traditional house using the raw material.
Yeah. So again, if whatever can be picked up visually, I mean, our limitation at some point, we have with thermal imagery, you're going to be able to see some changes in wood. If wood is completely rotted through, it'll have a different thermal pattern. So we are able to pick that up. But let's say that you have a facade made of wood, and they're wooden planks, and they're rotted through, but from the surface you can't see anything. Then that would be one place where if the thermal imagery didn't pick it up, then we would be limited by that ability, as opposed to somebody hitting it or whatever. But in most cases, what we can do is identify areas where the wood is damaged, where it is rotting, seeing little holes, seeing thermal signatures that are different, or seeing some sort of twisting. And then after that, you're able to take a project and say, well, now we can go and inspect it, manually and find. I mean, one of the things that in New York City, for example, they just passed this new. It's a new law trying to protect against. Basically, a lot of these parapet walls on top of these older buildings are falling off. So this is just a standard building. But what we do is these reds are basically plumb bob, and they will tell you that we have 1290 on one, the height of the building, and it'll get right down to the millimeter and tell you how close you are from, and that also this is the edge of the roof, and here's a parapet wall, and we can say this parapet wall is leaning in by half an inch, and then the next one along is actually perfectly flush. And so this is the level of detail we can also get to. So imagine you were doing some sort of, an old tower or an old wall, on a fort or something, or a castle or some sort of infrastructure. We're able to tell you, is the wall leaning outwards now, and will it be leaning in the future? And so that advantage of being able to see the comparison between today and some future time. So here you have a perfectly flat parapet wall, and so we can report to the city of New York that the parapets are not failing. They have cracks on their walls, and some of these are quite bad, which you could never see from the ground, but you can see a crack moving up through the space and running up along these walls. But again, you have to start somewhere. So yeah, any kind of material and anything that you really want to identify and do a comparison on, we can help.
Okay, this is my question. Like, apart of the cost, about the advantage or disadvantages, the tools and technology, what do you think about using the LiDAR? For example, drone LiDAR. Is it good or better, but rather than using the image-based LiDAR?
Yeah, so it's definitely not better. Like I was saying, on the Alhambra, they did LiDAR first, and then they figured out LiDAR will give you the form of the building, but it won't give you enough detail so that you can actually see the defects. And without the defects, what you have is you've got an outline. Well, you have a point cloud, but you don't have the defects themselves. And so now they're going back and, in the Alhambra's view, the difference between what we do and what a LiDAR alone can capture is very, very dramatic. And so, the point is to be able to give them this ability to see all the defects and then compare them over time.
Yeah. That's based on my own project. Actually, I'm using the LiDAR, also drone and drone LiDAR. We get every tools, every device, they get their own advantages and disadvantages as well. Okay. Yeah. Any question from audience for anyone? It's almost 80 minutes now. Any question? Okay. Another question, Michael. Which work the most difficult, or what do you say, but the most interesting or the most difficult, or something that very remarkable of your work? Any specific work?
So interestingly enough, we're starting the Eiffel Tower, and because it's steel members and all of that, it's like it fits in really well to what we're doing, even though it's really complicated. But glass buildings with photogrammetry can be tricky to see the quality of the glass. And again, we still will get in there and on something like that, the model doesn't look as good, but then the actual imagery still turns out fine. But in terms of the quality of a model, sometimes it doesn't look so good on reflective glass.
Yes, for the surface, right? The glass surface.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Any question? Anybody? I think you already
so
answered
much.
all the questions. Okay.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Michael, thank you for your presentation this evening. I'm very glad to bring you with the audience. I think this time we need to back to the host, Miss Elizabeth.
And feel free to. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, Miss Elizabeth.
You can go. You can
Miss
go.
Elizabeth. Okay,
yes,
back to you. Okay, back to you. Thank you again, Michael.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And again, everybody, feel free to reach out in an email if you have a specific question or if I can help with any particular project. And I'm happy to take a look at whatever you may have. All right. Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Michael. But wait, before closing the session, can we know where we will get your email? Because everyone quite interested in discussion with me, but we haven't really have your email here.
I didn't quite understand the question. I'm sorry.
Can you give us your email address? Because I
Yeah,
think
email
yeah.
address. Absolutely. Do you want me to?
Yeah.
I can put it in. I can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Where is the chat?
Before closing this.
Here's the chat. I'll put my email address in the chat. Okay. It's Michael at Inspekt AI.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Michael, for sending us the email address. Also, thank you very much, Mr. Yohannes, for guiding tonight's discussions. Our round of applause goes to Mr. Michael Earle for the insightful and also inspiring presentation on drones and AI for historical buildings. And also, everyone, thank you for your time and enthusiasm during the discussions. For those who are still interested in having further discussions with Mr. Michael, you are welcome to contact him via the email on the chat box. And also, hopefully tonight we have learned how smart technology can become an important tool in heritage conservation and not only expand our knowledge, but also strengthen our shared commitment to protection and caring for historical buildings as part of our cultural legacy. Next slide, please.
Great.
So please do not forget to follow the Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube accounts of Belanda Warisan Sumatra and Pansumnet, so you will not miss information about our upcoming discussions and activities. Tonight's session also available through live streaming on Belanda Warisan Sumatra YouTube channel. Next slide, please. Yes, this is our socials. Next. Complete information is also available at the Linktree/Pan-Sumatra network, including registration, speaker materials, the discussion group, attendance form, and also certificate information. Okay, so before we officially close tonight's session, we would like to invite all of us, Sahabat Pansumnet, to turn on our cameras for a short photo documentation, please. Please turn on the camera if possible. Okay.
Thanks, Esti.
Okay, I think. Okay, let's start the photo session in 1, 2, 3. Once more. Okay, very nice.
Thank you,
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
On behalf of Pansumnet, the Sumatra Heritage Trust and Pusat Dokumentasi Arsitektur, we would like to thank everyone for the presence and enthusiasm for tonight. Thank you for your questions, attention, and commitment to conservation. We hope to see you again in the next Pansumnet monthly session. I am Elizabeth Simoranki, signing out as your host for tonight. Thank you and good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.